Today on All Things 80s, it's Wave 2 of the Retro Collection. Welcome back to All Things 80s. Now I'm finally in possession of all 6, well actually 7, but for this video all 6 of the Retro Collection Wave 2 figures. And I'm not going to give you a review on the card backs and everything. We know they're flimsy, we know the fake weathering is stupid. We're going to look at the figures side by side compared to the originals, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on whether or not Wave 2 is worth it or not. So starting with the Han Hoth Solo, retro on the left, vintage on the right. So first things first, yeah, very similar. Of course, one of the issues with the vintage Kenner Han Hoth was that his legs would kind of splay apart, which has happened to mine. Now, with the original vintage, these legs were cast in blue plastic and painted tan for the pant colour. This one, yeah, also blue actually, but it's been done very well. Very good paint application here. Skin tone is a bit different. The new one, the retro, is very pinky. But wonderful clone, to be honest. Some of the first wave, the sculpt on the Retro Collection figures was a very soft sculpt with not a lot of definition. And whilst that is still the case here, it's not quite as bad as it was on the first wave. Now flipping them over, yeah, looks like the scarf on the original one's a bit thicker, but that just may be poor paint application. But really, wonderful clone. Now, if you notice here, see that? He's keeping hold of his blaster. That was a huge issue on the first wave, where the figures just could not keep their hands around their weapons. Terrible problem to have, I must admit. Now, the blaster itself, the Retro Collection, let me just put them back this way. The Retro Collection has come with a blue blaster, and as we all know, the original came... Sorry, that was a terrible mistake to make. The Retro Collection comes with a black blaster, and as we know, the original came with the blue blaster. Now, in terms of misidentifying one of these as being an original, at first glance, they do look very similar. I think going down the line, we may see some of these Retro Collection weapons being sold off as originals to people who don't really know. There's a bit of a difference in the so I guess I was going to say magazine, but they didn't fire bullets. But you know what I mean, this section here is a bit different. But to the average eye, these will probably be passed off as genuine Kenner items. But in rounding up the Han review, this is fantastic. And if I'm being honest, when I do complete my collection, or when I do start to put it on display, I would have no hesitation putting this figure in place of this figure, simply because I don't like the fact that he's spreading his legs like a loose woman. This one is perfect. Really good. Yep, very happy with this one. Now, staying with the Hoth theme, we have the retro on the left, vintage on the right. Now, the first thing that strikes me on this figure is the face sculpts are quite different, to be honest. The new Retro Collection is giving the impression that the princess was in fact kind of Chinese looking. I'm not sure, but it looks as if this is a flesh-coloured sculpt with black paint, whereas this one, the head colour was more of a brown colour. In terms of the body itself, pretty much identical, and it's been done the exact same way, where we have the light colour plastic was used for the legs and was painted to match her little jacket there. Ironically, if you look here where they've used the paint for the top of the leg part of the jacket, that paint actually matches the vintage jacket don't know if you can see that, whereas the paint on the vintage figure for the top of the legs actually matches the Retro Collection jacket. That's quite funny. Yeah, overall looks pretty good. And of course, nice solid limbs. Mine is, it's not too bad, but this is absolutely perfect. Going down the side here, yeah, all very good. And at the back, yep, very, very good. Excellent job this time. And once again, we have the blaster in the hand and it's staying in place. I like that a lot. I guess they must have listened to the feedback they got for Wave 1. Now, as with the Han Hoth figure, the original came with a blue blaster. Retro Collection is of course black and looks very similar. Actually, maybe not. This one seems to have more detail, or more of like a extended barrel, whereas this one does not. So they are different. Actually, they are quite different, even in terms of lining them up here. I don't know how well you can see that, but there is a difference. But again, to the average consumer, this could easily be passed off. But I do like this figure a lot, actually. To be honest, my Leia is in decent enough condition that I wouldn't need to replace her with the new one. But again, this is a nice looking figure. It's been done rather well, and a huge improvement on Wave 1. So now we have Master Yoda. So the first thing I've noticed is that my original vintage, the snake, is the other way round. And this appears to be the correct way, so I'm not sure what's happened with my original. I did buy it fairly recently, so could this be a reproduction? I don't know. But it's odd that the snake is, even the way it's been, the way the head has been curled round, it's the opposite way. If I take this off, so my snake is like that, whereas the new one, it's the opposite, you know, when this comes round. So this part of it is correct, but the way the snake comes around that way, mine is going the opposite way, so I'm not sure if I've been duped or not, or it may just be one of these weird discrepancies that has happened from time to time. But anyway, let's take a look at this new one. First things first, it looks pretty damn good. Although mine does have a friendlier looking face. I don't know how well you can see that. Mine looks a bit happier. And mine has the sort of orange painted eyes, where this is, the paint is getting closer to red in colour. Now the new one, his ears are curled round, whereas mine are going more out the way. Or it may have been how it was packaged, because these figures are getting wedged into these inner blisters. So it may just be that the plastic has been bent when it was packaged. Now, the sculpt itself is pretty good. I wouldn't say it was any softer than the original. Now the cape, or the cloak, whatever you want to call it, is pretty accurate, really. It's pretty hard to distinguish between the two. So I would expect to see these getting sold on eBay, possibly, who knows. But yeah, it's a very similar material, similar feel. Now the belt is pretty good. In fact, the metallic paint used is far nicer than the original, which more of a grey plastic. This, I don't know if that's been painted or not, probably, but that looks really good. I mentioned the snake. Maybe it's just over time that mine has been, I don't know what's happened here, but there's something amiss with this one, and it's all over the place, whereas this one has a nice shape to it, sits nicely around his neck. Looks really good. And the cane, let me just take these out. So this is the new one. This is the original. Slightly different color of brown. Sculpt-wise, very, very similar. And that was got that. Yeah, they feel the same. So now, in terms of me displaying a Yoda in my collection, I would have no hesitation in putting that one up over this one, simply because I'm not happy with this snake situation. That's troubling me now, that I don't know why my snake is facing the wrong way. But anyway, I'm very, very impressed with this Yoda figure. This is as good as it gets in terms of having a nice Yoda for your collection. So this is one I highly recommend. So now we've flown up to Bespin to look at Lando Calrissian. So, first glance, it's pretty good. Although I'm seeing immediately that mine, whilst it's not the white teeth Lando, you can definitely see his teeth that were molded there, whereas the new one, I'm not seeing the sort of sculpting of teeth. It might just be my eyesight, but that seems to be a bit of a difference there. The hair is less, the strands of hair are less well defined on this one, but we've already gone over the fact that these new figures do have a softer sculpt to them. The colours are pretty good. Mine looks to be slightly faded in the leg. Now, the neck, I have a lot more neck on mine than on this one. Also much thicker neck on the original. But, and the belt buckle is slightly different actually. My eyesight is terrible, but it looks to me as if this is more of a crisscross pattern, whereas this one looks to be like just three individually sculpted sort of features. Again, I have terrible eyesight now. So, from the front, it looks pretty good. From the back, well, the cape obviously. So the cape appears to be a slightly lighter grey texture. Well, see, the problem with comparing things that are almost 40 years apart is that this is brand new, and this has had 4 decades of wear and tear. So mine feels very, very soft and pliable, whereas this is much, much firmer. It looks good enough, although I have to say I've always had my caped figures with the cape folded all the way up, or not folded I should say, whereas these ones have come pre-folded, which I'm not a huge fan of. Now you would see there that the new one, his handle, Lando just lost his blaster. So of the ones we've looked at so far, I mean it's holding just. This is the worst of the bunch so far for holding the weapon. I mean, it's not as bad as Wave 1, but it's not a good grasp. But it's okay, I guess. So blasters, again, it's the blue Bespin blaster with the original. Now we have the black one, which does look okay, looks good enough. And again, I've said a million times before, I have no issue with repro. If it's for your collection, just don't go trying to fool people into paying vintage prices for repro. But to me, it makes the figure complete, and I like it. So yeah, so this one, Lando Calrissian, the head just is a bit off, but it's nothing major. And I would say that, again, they've done a pretty good job of this. The paint used for the skin tone is obviously different, but that could come down to the fact that this is almost 40 years old, whereas this is barely 6 months old. But yeah, I like this a lot. I'm happy enough with my original Lando that I wouldn't feel the need to replace him with this new one. But yeah, very nice figure. So now we're on to one of my all-time favourite figures, the Luke Bespin. So, First glance, very similar, but then when you look a bit closer, you can see that the face is a bit off and the hair is excessively yellow. I mean, it doesn't look too much different on camera, but in person, this is, you know, fluorescent yellow. Same with the Wave 1 look. I should have brought out the original Wave 1 look to compare face sculpt, but too late for that. But from memory, the Luke 1 face sculpt was terrible. This one is not terrible, so that's an improvement. Now, this is the first time I've noticed that my original look, and of course this new one, the lightsaber is just kind of floating there. It's not actually attached to his belt. So I guess you could say that he's using the Force to keep it up there. And I've heard something, people commenting about the new one, how part of his belt hadn't been painted. It looked like he had his dick hanging out, but I don't really know what they mean by that. Unless they mean this tiny section there that's not been painted. I guess, yeah. But then again, oops, I'm thinking, was mine painted and it wore off? Because they look the same. I don't know. But anyway, continuing to look at Luke. And there's what I mentioned in another video about Luke not holding on to his weapon too well. Terrible problem. Anyway, sculpting on the body, yeah, slightly less defined. There's no question of that, but it's not really a huge issue. The side, yeah, actually the paint they've used for the belt and everything, I like this quite a bit more than the original. This looks very well, it's been well applied, I'll give them that much. No complaints there. And the boots and everything, yeah, pretty good. Very good, actually. So the weapons, now a quick shake. See that? He is holding it. Yeah, quite well, actually. Well, it came out now, but I can say that they've done a good job this time with the hand sculpts to allow the figures to keep hold of their weapons. So blaster to blaster, again, originals were blue, the new ones are black, and they are actually quite different when you look very closely. If you know what you're looking at, you will know immediately that these are retro collection and not vintage Kenners, but they are done to such an extent that they can probably fool a large, you know, proportion of people who are buying these things on eBay not knowing what they're looking for. So that's potentially a problem there. Now, lightsabers. The color is reasonably good. I would say in terms of bendability, they feel exactly the same actually. I've got to be careful here. The sculpting on the hilt, I really can't see too well, but they do have the same 3 dots. So yeah, they've done a fantastic job of this. I guess when you really feel them in your hand, there is a different feel to them, but when you're buying on eBay or whatever, you're not going to know that, so be warned, there is the potential of getting this being passed off as vintage. But this actually is pretty good. Yeah, when I look at them closely, I do see that the faces are quite different. There's actually, the paint application for the eyes on the original has been done much better than it has on this new one, which is interesting, because I would have thought they would have had better techniques in this day and age, but that doesn't appear to be the case. But yeah, this is really good actually. I'm very happy with my original, but I would have no hesitation replacing him and putting this in a vintage display if this one was not up to my standard. But luckily, I'm very happy with my original, so this one will be remaining in the package. And last but not least, the figure everyone seems to want, Boba Fett. Now, this not being a human character with a human face, it's really hard to mess these up. And these do look really identical, apart from the fact that this one is much newer and mine is, some of the paint has rubbed a little bit. But in all honesty, this is as good as it gets in terms of retro collection or repro, whatever you want to call it. Fantastic looking figure, really is. So in terms of side-by-side comparisons, not a lot to talk about, to be honest. Aside from the fact that my paint has worn in some places, and it does look as if the person who assembled mine managed to get some of the green armor paint onto his belt here. Aside from that, this one is absolutely superb looking. Now, again, no issues holding the blaster, which is nice. The rocket pack, yep, very good. The sort of lipstick rocket, different color of red, but that's okay. And yeah, although just from behind it looks as if the head is slightly narrower on the new one than it is on the original. I don't know if it's just my eyesight or the angle. No, I would say for sure this is a slightly narrower helmet. How is it from the front? Yeah, you can see that from the front, even the new one, the Retro Collection, has a narrower looking helmet. But even then it's fractional, so you can still get away displaying that in a vintage collection if you so wished. I think this is the best figure they've done, alongside Yoda as a close second for this second wave. Really, really nice job here. Very impressive. And again, the weapons, they've gone with black, whereas the originals came with blue. Yeah, pretty good. Probably like 99% the same, but there are slight differences that do distinguish them between each other. But again, as I keep saying, it's not enough difference to make it obvious. And of course, sadly, there will be people who get ripped off as a result. But that's not my problem right at this moment. I am extremely happy with this figure. Yep, it's quite possible that when I do get round to displaying my collection, this may well fill the place of this one, just because the paint is so crisp, so clean. And yeah, fantastic job, Hasbro. And you know what? I take my hats off to them, because I was very critical last time round on Wave 1, especially for the hand sculpt issue. And you know, there's no getting away from the fact that they've done a poor job with the card backs. But this second wave, they have done a fantastic job, and hats off to them for that, because these are such iconic figures. They really had to do the best job they could to retain the support of a lot of vintage fans. And in my opinion, they've done that. They've gone above and beyond and given us a fantastic Wave 2 of Retro Collection figures. So there we have it, Wave 2 of the Retro Collection. So tell me down below, do you think they're worth it? I want to say a big thank you to the Patreons. Your support is absolutely fantastic. Also a special thank you to you who sent me the Boba Fett. And you wanted to remain anonymous, and I respect that, but a huge, huge thank you to you. That was a wonderful gesture. And I ask you if you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more videos from All Things 80s.